The Marshall Thundering Herd open up spring practice on Monday. We got Luke Creasy from the Huntington Herald Dispatch. It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. I am your host, Dave Schultz. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. All right, so we thought, the Jaguars, South Alabama, started spring ball a little bit late. Georgia State had been done for a couple of weeks already. Marshall not starting until Monday. We bring in Luke Creasy to discuss it. Is there a quarterback controversy? Who is replacing Lance Guidry as DC? And, of course, what are the expectations for the Marshall Thundering Herd? Let's hear from the Marshall beat writer for the Herald Dispatch, Luke Creasy. Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. I'm your host, Dave Schultz. Always thrilled to be bringing back Luke Creasy from the Huntington Herald Dispatch. We will preview, as it turns out, the Marshall Thundering Herd spring practice. We talked Georgia State. They're done. They finished at the beginning of March. The Jaguars hadn't started yet. They just got underway about a week ago, and now Marshall isn't starting until the 27th. I got a feeling that has to do with weather.
Yeah, well, I mean, they've got an indoor facility, so I don't know how much it has to do with weather. They did almost the entirety of spring practice indoors last year, too. I think part of it is Marshall does a really good job of taking care of some of the outgoing athletes and focusing on pro day, things like that, and getting those guys ready and opening up the facilities for them to be able to come in and do some workouts ahead of pro day, which of course for Marshall was yesterday. And they have a pretty extensive off-season program before they get the spring ball, which is called the fourth quarter program. It's something that Huff kind of brought with him from the Saban mind at Alabama. Saban, of course, he's well known for a pretty strict off-season program with his guys, and Huff kind of brought that here. They've been going through that for the last couple months, and had pro day yesterday, and now the focus shifts to putting all of their resources in, to get spring ball started on Monday.
I do find it interesting on how, different people do different things, right? Like we said, Georgia State is done. They had very little time since the end of the season to rest or, change their bodies. And they're going to have a couple of months before the end of school. Whereas Marshall's basically going to finish up like right before finals. And I presume take a couple week break. And then they're right back at it in the summer.
Yeah, the spring game is on April 22nd, and right. So compared to some other programs, that's late. But also you have to look at, and I think South Alabama is kind of in the same boat as well. Marshall's season went a month later than some of the other teams in the Sun Belt, like Georgia State. Right. With the bowl game, and coming off that bowl game and trying to decide who was coming back. If they have eligibility, are they coming back for that year? Are they going to transfer? Who do they have? I think once all those factors came into play, then they hit it hard with the fourth quarter program, and and then if I remember correctly, a couple of years ago, they didn't get the entirety of that fourth quarter program in Huff's first year, and that kind of pushed back the start of spring ball because he really wants to have a really good idea of the work ethic of his guys, and wants to go in prepared so that they can make the most of that 3-week practice time. Huff isn't one to waste time. He's going to go into Monday kind of knowing what he has already, and just that gives that 3-week period a chance for guys to prove themselves, and I think it should be an entertaining few weeks.
All right, we're talking with Luke Creasy from the Huntington Herald Dispatch, previewing Marshall Thundering Herd spring football coming up on Monday. All right, so I've been doing the previews of the quarterbacks in each division. It appears that the East has 3 incumbents, including Cam Thatcher, and so maybe there is no quarterback competition, or is there a quarterback competition for the Thundering Herd heading into spring ball?
I think the fan base wants there to be. And what I mean by that is
that because the last name of the quarterback that may be involved?
I think that has a lot to do with it.
Okay. You know what? Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah. Cole Pennington, of course, sat last year, he got time in one game. That was the season opener against Norfolk State. And that was a game when Marshall threw every quarterback they had in the game that time. I think they played 6 quarterbacks, which was just absurd. But I'd never seen that before. But, I think that there's some excitement around Cole Pennington's ability. He performed really well on scout team last year, throughout the year, and impressed some coaches there. And so I think, I don't know if I'd call it an open competition, but I think it's Cam Fancher's job to lose. Because, given what he did last year, he came in, won 6 games as a starter, and really did what they needed to win ball games. And I think there's something to be said for that, and you can't discredit that and take that away from him. So I think that, they will go in. Cam probably goes into spring ball as the one, in my opinion. And then, if Cole Pennington shows some things, maybe there's a chance to win that starting job for Pennington. But I think a lot of the excitement has to do with the last name. Not to take anything away from Cole's ability, because he's a good quarterback. But so is Cam Fancher, and I think he showed that there are some weaknesses to Fancher's game, and I'm sure there are some weaknesses to Cole's that we just haven't seen on film yet, because we haven't seen him in a meaningful game scenario in college football. So, I think back to that game when he appeared in Norfolk State, and when Chase Cunningham's coming in the game, when Pete Zamora's coming into the game, there's not really, nobody's really paying attention to it. They're like, oh, there's a new quarterback in. Well, Pennington's name gets announced over the PA system, and then the 15,000 people that are still there, all erupt in applause to see him, play 3-4 snaps on one series, and But I think it should be fun. There's fewer quarterbacks on this year's roster than there were last year. Last year there were 6, and they carried 6. Of course, they brought in a transfer in Henry Columbi last year, who did not go through spring ball, but joined the team in the summer. I think it says a lot about the coaching staff's belief in Fancher and whoever might be behind him that they didn't bring in a transfer quarterback for this spring. And I think, when you're looking at that from an outside perspective, it's like, okay, maybe these guys believe in what these quarterbacks could do.
All right. Well, tell us a little bit about Cole Pennington. For those of us who do remember watching his father throw passes to Randy Moss and may have won a few bucks on those games back in the day, is he a lot like Dad? Accurate arm, maybe not the strongest of all arms. What is Cole compared to his father?
He's got a very similar skill set and a very similar build too, as well. I think if you fast forwarded Cole, 20 years, he probably looks exactly like Chad Pennington does today. Got the curly hair, got everything. He's got the arm. He's got the IQ. I'd be a little worried if he didn't have the IQ.
Sure.
Giving up who he grew around and learned to play quarterback. And Chad actually had the ability to coach him in high school. And so that was kind of a cool dynamic as well. Of course, they're ingrained in the Huntington community, and Cole is certainly a capable quarterback. Had a lot of success in high school, in throwing the ball and getting out there and being mobile too. I wouldn't say he's as mobile as Cam Fancher at this point in his career, but he definitely has an accurate arm, and I'll be excited to watch him go through spring ball and see what he's able to do.
All right, let's take a time out. When we come back with Luke Creasy from the Herald Dispatch, we will talk about the turnover on defense, and the biggest turnover is probably on the sidelines. But first, let me tell you a little bit about FanDuel. The tournament is heating up, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel's America's #1 sportsbook. because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything, from the money line to the point scores and threes drained. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, welcome back to Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. I'm your host, Dave Schultz. Obviously, the big news in Huntington, at least part of it, was defensive coordinator Lance Guidry moving on, not once, but twice. Let's talk to Luke Creasy about what the Thundering Herd have to replace on defense. All right, we're talking with Luke Creasy from the Huntington Herald Dispatch on Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. All right, big part of the Marshall offense is the running back room. We do have a little turnover there, and hopefully somebody back from the beginning of the season. How's that looking?
It's looking good. Rasheen Ali, of course, the projected starter there, missed 10 games last year after an injury happened in fall camp, but you lose one of the best running backs in the nation that came in to replace him, and Kalen LeBourne. And LeBourne, I think he was over 1,500 yards, led the league in touchdowns and rushing touchdowns and rushing yards. And I think what Rasheen Ali brings that maybe Kalen didn't is the dual threat ability. To catch passes out of the backfield. Kalen only had a handful of catches, I think 116 yards for the season. He averaged that rushing just about in a game. And so, Rasheen Ali is definitely the experienced guy returning. And it's kind of a unique situation to be able, you don't return your leading back, but you're returning your leading back from 2 years ago. Who also ran for 1,400 yards and led the nation in, total touchdowns. So that's a good situation for Marshall to be in. But Huff's a running backs coach, and so I think there's a lot of depth behind Rasheen Ali that people don't see. I think of a guy like AJ Turner, who flashed a little bit last year. I think he played in 6 or 7 games, if my memory serves me right, and made some good plays. He's speedy, he's shifty. And so you've got probably a 1-2 punch there. Ethan Payne is back. In situations where his power running ability can be useful. I think he's probably, in my opinion, the 3 behind AJ Turner and Rasheen Ali. And then you've got guys like Isaiah Gordon, who didn't get much playing time last year, but still have the power and size to be a really good running back. So I think it'll be interesting to see. The running back's always been kind of a wild card the last few years under Huff because, coming into Huff's first year, Rasheen Ali was third on the depth chart coming into the Navy season opener, and he scored 4 touchdowns.
And led the nation in touchdowns.
Right? Yeah. Sheldon Evans kind of got the short end of that stick that year because he was running down, inside the 5-yard line, and then Rasheen Ali would punch it in and finish with 4 touchdowns that day.
So you picked up Rasheen Ali very quickly on your college football fantasy team, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, I mean, like it would have made sense, just because of the way he was being used. And then Ali takes that and turns it into look how explosive I can be. And and then he makes the most of it. And they used him in kick return situations a couple of times that first year. Had a 99-yard kickoff return for a touchdown against App State in Marshall's last year in Conference USA. So Huff definitely still has the mind of a running backs coach, and I think that creates some fun scenarios for that group.
All right, so what about the offensive line? Fans want to know about the quarterbacks, the running backs, defensive ends, maybe lockdown corners. Offensive line always gets overlooked. Where is Marshall on the O-line?
Yeah, a lot of those guys are coming back, which I think is good for continuity. I think you lose the biggest body on the line in Kendrick Sartor, who, of course, went through Pro Day yesterday. And, but Ethan Driscoll comes back, Logan Osborne, Trent Holler. Those are, that's your core on the offensive line. Those guys have been together for a while now, a couple years. I think that'll help. And then, it'll be interesting to see what comes up behind there as far as depth goes. I think this year you'll get to see kind of a little more of what Marshall added through the transfer portal last year on the offensive line, because they were offensive heavy last year, and I think you didn't get to see a lot of those guys play. And so I think that'll be an interesting dynamic as well. But you do lose a couple bodies in Kendrick Sartor and Cedrice Palant, who was a transfer from Rutgers that came into Marshall last year to play his final year. So some turnover, not as much as there will be in other positions, but certainly room to improve for that group. I think as the season went on, they kind of got themselves together after losing their offensive line coach in the middle of last season, really after 2 weeks, because after the Notre Dame game, Eddie Morrissey, who was coaching the running backs, left the program. And so they were without a true offensive line coach. Bill Legg had stepped in, and I think he's the guy this year. They've gone and hired a tight ends coach, which was Bill Legg's position. So Bill Legg is going to, head up the offensive line, and now has, a true offseason to work with him. Whereas he was trying to make adjustments and things mid-season last year. And I think, the numbers will show that wasn't always the most efficient group out on the field. But they've got room to take a step forward, and I think it'll be interesting to see, how that depth that they've built, comes to work for them.
Talking with Luke Creasy from the Huntington Herald Dispatch, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Let's flip it over to the defensive side. When you're talking Marshall, you're talking Charles Huff. I know you said running backs, but it all, starts and ends with the defense. Marshall with one of the best defenses in the nation. And, who were key losses, and do they have replacements for them?
I think the biggest key loss is the defensive coordinator, Lance Guidry. I don't.
Couple teams lost him this offseason.
Yeah, true. Of course, he took the job at Tulane and then bounces a few weeks later over to the U of Miami.
Was he there long enough to get a paycheck?
I think it was like 5 or 6 weeks.
Okay, all right. So yes.
maybe I don't know. But hopefully
you have to pay back moving expenses. Probably didn't even get a chance to move. Actually, right? You probably didn't even get a chance to move.
Probably. I know that that's a big piece to replace. But they got a lot back on the defensive side. When you talk about Mike Abraham, Eli Neal at linebacker, Owen Porter up front on the defensive line, but they do lose some talented guys. Kobe Cumberlander was kind of the heart and soul of that defense as far as energy goes. Anthony Watts, who was a transfer that was brought in, he leaves as well. Stephen Gilmore, a lot of those guys that came up with big plays and big moments are gone. And so I think, again, room to step up. I think the secondary probably has to replace them most. If, I'm thinking about, Josh Bowers, who was kind of underrated coming through Marshall, but was a consistent player. Andre Sam transferred to Tulane after Lance Guidry left. Isaiah Norman made some really big plays for the Herd. He's gone out of eligibility. So that secondary is going to look different. And I think, I don't know who the true front runner to replace some of those positions are. I know they brought in some transfers on the defensive side. I mentioned they were offensive heavy in the portal last year. Well, they were defensive heavy this year. And I think, Huff kind of looked at that on paper and realized that they needed some depth and went out and got it. JJ Roberts is a kid that came from Wake Forest, local guy, played at Cabell Midland High School, which is just about 20 minutes from Marshall. And, he comes in and brings, that Power 5 experience and playmaking ability and gives him a chance to come home. And a couple guys that I'm excited to see are sons. We talked about Pennington.
Right.
There are a couple guys on the defensive side who their dads also played at Marshall. Jaden Yates is the son of Max Yates, who is one of the best defensive players to come through Marshall. And so I think you're getting to see that second generation of player come through, and that's a fun dynamic. I think especially for a university that is so focused on community and ingrained in the community, to see some of these second generation players come through that have the ability to play and are looking to make a name for themselves and kind of step out of the shadow of that family name.
All right, let's take one more time out. When we come back and wrap it up with Luke Creasy, we'll talk about what are the expectations for the Marshall Thundering Herd in 2023. But first, let me tell you about Built Bar. The Built March Madness bracket is here, and we know you have a favorite bar or puff, and now is your time to make it count. Go to BuiltMarchMadness.com to vote for your favorites. You know I'll be voting for the Churro Puff, and if you want the Churro Puff to win, then you'll be voting for that as well. Support your team, support your bar or puff. And when you vote for your favorite bar or puff, you'll be entered into a drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built. Not only that, but one Locked On fan will win a 12-month subscription to Built to have Built's best bars or puffs delivered monthly straight to your door. You got to try Built. Built, the best protein bar ever. Seriously, they're so amazing, you won't think they're good for you. What makes Built bars and puffs so good? Well, for starters, they're all high in protein, low in sugar, and covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. Run to BuiltMarchMadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar or puff and pick up a box while you're there. You can vote every day in March, so hop on in and support your pick. Continuing to lose weight down towards the 208 mark. So a really good job there. And actually, the jeans are a little bit loose these days. So I'm loving that. And I'm telling you, Built and the Built bars and the puffs are a big part of that. All right, let's wrap things up with the Herald Dispatch's Luke Creasy. What are the expectations for the Marshall Thundering Herd in 2023? All right, let's wrap up things with Luke Creasy, Huntington Herald Dispatch, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Marshall Thundering Herd starting spring practice on Monday. All right, if you polled the coaches, who's going to win the East right now at the end of March, they would probably start with Coastal Carolina. Now, we'll see if that changes post-spring portal, depending on what Grayson McCall does. I would tend to think that Marshall is going to be right up there along with James Madison. James Madison also has to replace Todd Centeio, and that is obviously a big part. And you got this ODU wild card with their quarterbacking and their new offensive coordinator, kind of like Texas State in the West, their new coach and their new quarterback. But what do you think the expectations are for Marshall? And maybe is that any different than what you think they should be?
I think the expectation inevitably is going to be to play for a title.
Really?
And I don't know how fair that is. But
okay.
Giving that they lost a good bit of talent on the defensive side and had some turnover, I think there might be a little bit of a learning curve, especially when you look at the non-conference schedule. By no means a breeze. They have Virginia Tech at home, are on the road at East Carolina and at NC State.
How about the Hokies coming to Huntington? How awesome is that?
Yeah, I think that's the front end of a home and home that they've played each other a good bit in years past, and that's been a fun series, and kind of especially entertaining this time around, considering that a former Marshall quarterback started for Virginia Tech last year and has the chance to do that again and come back to Huntington. Right. So, but I think the three you mentioned are right there: Coastal, James Madison, and Marshall. And I think it's going to be tough to come out on top. Between those three schools. And the good thing about it is they all play each other. And so you're going to get to see these matchups head to head. And, I think, analysts and beat writers can predict all they want to, but, come October, when those conference games start to hit, I think you're going to learn a lot about all of these teams. But, Marshall's coming off a 9-win year. And given the success that they've had, with the pieces they've had and what they have coming back as far as talent goes, I know that there's an expected drop off. Huff kind of expects to be right there in the mix again this year, and I think that's probably exciting for the fan base to hear. But the bar is set pretty high because in their first year in the Sun Belt, I think they were competitive, and I think when you look at some of those games, they let those slip away. And
right, we talked about that Cajuns game during the Sun Belt
Cajuns game,
yeah.
Coastal Carolina. When they come out and score 3 touchdowns in the first quarter, but are held to 24 points for the game. Marshall had a chance there if they come out ready to play.
Right.
And so I think it was there for the taking last year, which is disappointing to look back on if you're the team, but also kind of exciting because you're right there.
Yeah. All right. He's Luke Creasy with the Herald Dispatch in Huntington. We're talking about Marshall opening up spring practice on Monday. What are you writing about in the Herald Dispatch besides what I just
said? That's just about it, man.
Right.
I of course wrote about Pro Day yesterday, and I've got some features lined up on some of these guys that are coming in, and I'll get a chance to get my first look at the team on Monday, and I'm going to enjoy it. So I'll probably be cranking out stories every day on during spring practice, and just enjoying that, and and trying to do some features along the way that give some insight to the program that you might not otherwise have. So,
and quickly on the basketball side, Dan D'Antoni sticking around, which is a surprise to nobody.
Yeah, I mean, what were they going to do after a 24-win season?
Right.
I don't think, and I said this, I think we talked about this, when we were down there at the tournament. I don't think there was any scenario where he walked away or was forced out after this year, because I think he one of the nation's best turnarounds as far as wins and losses go,
like ever.
Yeah, and so of course they're one and done in the tournament down there, and that kind of killed their chances at any NIT bid. Of course, took them out of contention for the NCAA tournament. So I think there's a lot to build on. Of course, you do lose Tavion Kinsey, but having the head man back is important. I think that's good for the program.
He's Luke Creasy with the Herald Dispatch. Always appreciate it, my friend. Be good, and we'll talk to you again soon. Enjoy spring ball.
All righty. Thank you.